It's finally here. Another show, another soccer show from myself, but this time it's coming on the Five Reasons Sports Network YouTube channel. Thank you so much to everybody tuning in. This is the first edition of the 30-minute pitch every single Thursday, 10 a.m. I'll be here talking with you about all of our local soccer news, whether it's U.S. men's national team, Inter Miami, but also all the biggest storylines in soccer headlines. There's so much to cover all around the world. And I'm actually very blessed that it's starting right now in a time where World Cup qualifiers are heating up, but we'll get into that in a little bit. That'll be the topic of the show today. But I want to also mention, you can see in the top corner there that today's show is brought to you by Dangerous Minds Brewing Company, an amazing brewery out here in Pompano Beach, located right at the city center. It's a great spot here up in North Broward. If you're in the Pompano area for food, for beer, for wine, anything you guys want, they brew everything in house when it comes to beer. They have a ton of selections that are always changing, always rotating, and a lot of the stuff that I've tried has been pretty phenomenal. They do a lot of different types. They have a beer for every single kind of beer drinker. You guys should definitely come by and check it out. And also, as you see there on the menu, you can even just do little tastes. You can do little tastes. You can do a full one if you really like it. They really cater to everybody's needs when it comes to beer selection, and I think that is the best that you can ask for. And also, if you like pizza, if you like craft pizza, individual pizza, Dangerous Minds has it for you. They do a phenomenal job at making these handcrafted pizzas. I believe they make the dough in house, fresh every single morning, and honestly, it is fantastic. All the different selections, it's crispy, it's juicy, it's yummy, everything that you can imagine on a pizza. And I'm pretty sure you can customize it any way you like, but they also have this design menu for you to have all these different amazing pizzas. One of my favorites is the pepperoni and sausage. That's the one I usually go for. Maybe that's a little boring, but there's something for everybody. Just like the beer, just like the pizza, there's something for everybody. So make sure you come out and check out Dangerous Minds. It's a great place here in Pompano, and they're also very open to any soccer fan. I know that the owners are English and German, a Liverpool and Werder Bremen supporter. They are really great people, and anytime you want to go in and watch a match, they have it on for you at all times. Don't even worry. And I believe they also do live music every now and then. I believe Wednesdays, Fridays, Saturday nights, they have live music there, an event going on at the least. It's a great atmosphere. So go out and make sure you check out Dangerous Minds. Make sure you mention myself, the 30-minute pitch, Five Reasons Sports. They would really, really appreciate it. So thank you guys. Thank you, Dangerous Minds. Thank you, Five Reasons Sports. And finally, we're back here talking about football, soccer, the world's game, the beautiful game. I'm so excited to get right into this. So let's just do it. Let's start in Europe, right? Let's start in the European qualifiers where, you know, for the most part, you kind of know who's going to advance. And actually, before I even do that, let me just say, at the moment, as I'm recording this and as we're going live, only 3 teams of the 32 that are going to play in Qatar in 2022 in the winter have qualified. Those 3 teams being Qatar themselves, the hosts, of course, and also because of playing so well in qualifying, Denmark and Germany have already qualified for the World Cup. They have clinched the top of their groups in UEFA qualifying. I believe they both only have 2 games left, but they're past the second place and third place teams by a 6-point margin. They've played phenomenal, and so shout out to them. I mean, we had Denmark in that Euro 2020 that had almost a great Cinderella story. After losing to England 2-1 later on in the tournament, but they've done enough in qualifying to solidify themselves as a contender in Europe, and they will be headed to the World Cup. So that's really good for them. I wanted to start off too talking about the Nations League. Really some fantastic games. Shout out to France for getting the I was going to say the gold, but shout out to France for getting the win there. I mean, it was a marvelous comeback with a couple of spectacular goals. So it was really, really good for them. and I think that they're probably going to qualify anyway. They're in a group with Ukraine, Finland, Bosnia, and Kazakhstan. They're 3 points ahead of the rest with a game in hand. I think with a couple of with a win or two, they'll be qualified in, and if not, they'll at least be qualified into that playoff round that will happen in Europe. And actually, a couple of interesting matchups here in Group B and in Group C in UEFA qualifying, where a really good nation when it comes to football is going to be in one of those playoff rounds. You have both in Group B, Sweden and Spain fighting for first place. Both have played 6 of their 8 games. Sweden at the top right now, something you may not expect, with 15 points, and Spain are in second with 13. It would get nervy for Spain if they got into that qualifying playoff where only 3 teams get out of it, of the 6 that will get in. So I am excited to see what happens there. There's a couple good matchups coming up in the next November window. I believe it's only 4 weeks away. We're wrapping one up and we're going on to the next. So that is something to look out for. And then I look at Group C, and I look at Italy, and I look at Switzerland. Italy having their first international loss, and I don't even know how many games in that Nations League semifinal. I believe it was against Spain. I think they ended up winning third place against Belgium. But man, Italy, 14 points on 6 games played, but only ahead on 2 goals. 2 goals to Switzerland, who are on 14 points with 6 games played. Everybody else is kind of not really in the mixing. I believe both of them, for the most part, have qualified themselves for at least that knockout round, that playoff round. And that, with one of those teams being there, like I said, with Spain, it's going to get a little bit nervy. And then you have one more shock almost in the first group in UEFA, and that's Portugal being in second place behind Serbia. Now, Serbia have played one extra game, so if Portugal do win their game in hand, they will go top. But Serbia are absolutely, they've had some really good players over the years. They've got some really good players now, and they didn't really make a name for themselves as much as they probably would have hoped in Euro 2020. But I guess it really matters most when it comes to World Cup qualifying. So if they can top the group and force Portugal to go into a playoff with countries like Spain, with countries like either Italy or Switzerland, that is something you would want to look out for. But if Serbia can top this group, that'll be really good for them and their nation. And going on to the World Cup would be something that is a feat in and of itself. But to top a group and not have to worry about qualifying past that is one of the best things you could ask for. One country that I was kind of high on going into Euro 2020 was Turkey. And they they disappointed. I think they disappointed massively, and I think it was due to maybe lack of experience, a lot of younger players, but also some players that have played for Turkey for a while. You look at like Hakan Çalhanoğlu, who's now playing for Inter Milan. You look at Burak Yilmaz. You look at a couple of these guys that have been there for a while, and they just disappointed. But they did have I believe, one of the youngest rosters in Euro 2020. But you look at Group G here, and it's not even close to being finished. It is a tight race. It looks like the Netherlands are going to be able to make it, but there's still 6 points to be had for every single team in this group. And at the top of it is the Netherlands. In second place, you have Erling Haaland's Norway. And then you have Turkey with 15 points. Norway have 17, and the Netherlands have 19. So a couple of those games are going to be really interesting down the stretch. I believe the Netherlands played Norway in their last match. We'll see what that means for both of those countries. And lucky enough for Turkey, they've already gotten through most of those tough matches. They've played Netherlands twice, and they've played Turkey twice. Their last 2 matches are against Gibraltar and Montenegro. So those are 6 points that they absolutely have to have if they want to get into a top 2 spot in this group. And if they do that, I think I reckon they can make some noise with the experience that all of these guys are gaining. They're playing with each other. They haven't for a while, but their run of form just hasn't been there. You look at the group stage in Euro 2020, and 3-0 loss to Italy, 2-0 loss to Wales, 3-1 loss to Switzerland, and that's it. They lost 3 games by a ridiculous margin, back to back to back. And now you're asking the country to completely turn around their form in World Cup qualifying. But like I said, lucky enough for them, they are playing 2 of the weaker nations in this group in Europe as a whole, which is really, really good. They got a good draw against Norway, I will say, and they turned it around with a win against Latvia. But right before that, they had that ridiculous 6-1 loss against the Netherlands. So that's a country that I'm kind of looking out for. I'm expecting either Russia or Croatia to go through in another group like that. England is looking like they're going to go through with Poland in the qualifying, and it's going to be interesting. I'm not too excited for the rest of the two matchups. I don't know if there's any marquee ones that I'm really looking out for, but what I'm really looking out for is to see, like I mentioned, which teams in UEFA are not going to hit that top spot and how vital these playoffs are going to be for a ton of these countries. I mean, only 3 of them are going to make it, and there are 6 or 7 groups. So who are going to be the best second place teams? That's what I'm looking out for. Is Spain going to be one of those that I have to try and qualify? Or Portugal? Or Switzerland? There are so many different options for really good matchups in a playoff. And honestly, it's crazy to think that there's only 2 more matchups in qualifying in UEFA. The World Cup is right around the corner, guys. Like, it is so close, and it's not something that I would have imagined coming so close. You're always kind of surprised by it. I know we have this long 4-year wait, but the closer it gets, the more real it feels. And with these qualifiers going on all around the world, it's time for a lot of these countries to start buckling up and buckling down and making sure they have the right roster, they have the right coach to get them to qualify. And actually, the first, I think, firing that I've seen as of late in qualifying has come from CONCACAF, which I will get into next. From the Honduran manager, he has been fired after a tough loss, and I think they sit now at the bottom of qualifying after Jamaica's really rough start. They overtook them. Jamaica got a win 2-0 over them, and right after the game, immediately following the game, we saw that the Honduran coach has been fired. And once we move on here to these CONCACAF, and I will also talk about South America later on, these are the toughest ones, right? These are the ones with a low amount of countries, right? Europe has, it feels like hundreds of countries, but you look at South America and you look at North America, and you're only playing a group with 8 or 10 teams. And all of these teams have gone through a bunch of qualifying already, and this is it. This is down to the last couple of nations here that are really trying to compete, and they don't have the luxury like Europe to have 13 teams qualify. No. At the most, CONCACAF will have 4 teams qualify. Only the top 3 are guaranteed to go into the World Cup, and the same goes for South America, which we'll talk about, like I said, in a second. You only have 4 teams qualifying, and the 5th one having to play in a qualification round if they want to move on. It's insane, and these are the best, I believe, qualifiers to follow. These are the most intense qualifiers to follow because there are real rivalries here. There's real passion here. Not that there isn't real passion in Europe, but these are teams that play each other all the time, nonstop. Like, I'm not too worried about a Germany and Gibraltar matchup, correct? And that can happen all the time in group stages. But anytime I look at any of these teams in CONCACAF, and I'm looking at the United States, I'm saying, oh man, this could be something that I'm worried about. It just, if they make it to the octagonal and CONCACAF, then they're a strong team no matter what. And playing on the road in CONCACAF is not like playing on the road anywhere else. Playing on the road in South America is not like playing on the road anywhere else. But let's get into that. But first, let me just say another thank you to Dangerous Minds for sponsoring the show here today. I talked about their beer. I talked about their pizza. We have Premier League starting again on the weekend, which we'll talk about next week. So go and make sure that you can hang out with them, hang out like an owl, and watch some of the greatest games in the world happen in the Premier League and other leagues around the world. Great beer, great pizza. They'll start your day off right. So thank you to Dangerous Minds for sponsoring us and letting us be able to have this amazing show. So let's get right back into CONCACAF, because last night there were a ton of games, right? Everybody in the octagonal played. And I'm going to start with obviously the country that we want to hear about, or maybe not. I'm not sure who's listening, but we'll start with the quote unquote local country, and that's the United States. They're coming off a really tough loss to Panama 1-0, and now this game last night, after they conceded in the first minute to Costa Rica, they turned it around and got the win. They did a good job. They played really well, but you look at both of those rosters that Greg Berhalter put out, and I understand having 3-game windows is really tough. But the difference in the roster that you see right in front of you, the Miles Robinsons, the Richards, Robinson, Dest, Musa, Adams, McKinney, Weah, Aronson, Pepe. I mean, those are the guys you want starting for the national team if they're not named Christian Pulisic or Gio Reyna. And you look at the Panama matchup, the team that was rotated, all of these different guys that have been for the team, I mean, been playing for the team for a while, sure, but aren't as talented as some of these guys that we have now. And I'm the excuse that I'm not here to have is experience or things like that. Should Giassi Zardes still be playing for the national team? Probably not. Paul Arriola, Sebastian Lletget, Kellen Acosta. Maybe this is a little bit, rude, I guess. But I think that there's a lot more quality around the world that the United States has produced. And those are the guys that you need on the field, especially in CONCACAF when you are playing very good opponents who are going to be physical. And sometimes you're going to need really good technical ability to outscore them. And that's kind of what happened in the Costa Rica matchup. You saw an early goal go in just off of, I guess, a mental error by Destin and Stefan, and they turned it around. They absolutely dominated Costa Rica from that point on, all the way through the first half, all the way through the second half, and they got 2 goals off of some brilliant plays. The Serginho Dest goal itself, just the absolute shot that he took was amazing. I mean, it was an outstanding shot on his weaker foot from the top of the box. But you look at the play before that set him up for the goal. I believe there were about 13 or 14 passes within a 35-second time frame, starting from the back, starting from the goalkeeper, which I think actually he played like the 4th or 5th pass. So the kind of team that Berhalter needs on the field. They need to be able to advance the ball against these CONCACAF teams. They need to be able to outperform them just on a quality level. And it looked like in the Panama match with the midfield that consisted of Lletget and Acosta, they weren't able to do that. They weren't able to create anything. It was one of the most stagnant offenses I've seen the U.S. put out with these guys on the field, or in, I guess, Berhalter's tenure for the most part. That is why I am so adamant about the United States playing their best players whenever possible. It's important. It is really, really important. And when you come into the next window, you're hoping that you're going to have probably Christian Pulisic and Gio Reyna back, but that game coming back is against Mexico. I believe that game coming back is against Mexico. And look at the standings right there. 14 points, 11 points. Canada creeping up with 10, who had a great game yesterday, and I will talk about that. But that is a game where all of your quality needs to be on the field. And their quality is going to be on the field. They had a good win last night, Mexico against El Salvador. They definitely did test them, El Salvador, but El Salvador likes to test everybody. They got their kind of final stamp on the game with a penalty that Raul Jimenez put away. But honestly, playing away at El Salvador is one of the toughest things you're ever going to have to do in CONCACAF, and Mexico got the job done, and they've been getting the job done. They have not lost yet in CONCACAF, and if the United States want to be a contender, not only in CONCACAF and not only in qualifying, but in the World Cup, games like this are games you have to win. Now, I know they did it in the Nations League, and I know they did it in the Gold Cup. They beat Mexico twice in 2 finals, back-to-back in the same summer, but that is not really what matters at the end of the day, right? What matters at the end of the day is getting your nation to Qatar in 2022. And the United States at the moment do look a little bit shaky. Only 3 points secured in a top 3 spot. And the team that's in 4th with 8 points is a team that beat you 1-0 at their home. That's something that you have to worry about. Luckily for the United States, that game against Mexico, I believe, is going to be in Cincinnati. So it'll be a home game for them. But let's be real. Anytime there's a home game in the United States, the Mexican fans absolutely show out. So that I can't imagine what the atmosphere is going to be like at TQL Stadium, but I'm pretty excited for it. So let's move into a couple of other matches that happened last night. I talked about the Mexico El Salvador game, but this Canada game against Panama, one that I was really interested in, because not only did Panama, they were coming off of a 1-0 win against the United States, but now they're going. Now they look like contenders, right? Now they look like contenders, getting on 8 points in just 3 or 4 games. And squad rotation is something that's talked about, right? And that's what I just talked about with Berhalter. Panama did not rotate almost anybody in this match at all. From the United States game to this game, Panama kept everybody on the field, and that's something that's hard to do in 3-game windows. Granted, Berhalter was making 7 or 8 changes, so that's different. I understand rotating a couple of guys, but Panama put out a lineup that may not have been the freshest. And you look at the Canada lineup and all the quality that's there: Alphonso Davies, Jonathan David, Osorio, Tejan Buchanan, who I absolutely love. You have a good back line now with Alistair Johnson, Kamal Miller, Richie Larea. I mean, those are guys that are now solidifying themselves for Canada. And in this first half, you saw a pretty good football. I would say. I thought there was some pretty good football from both sides. It went into halftime 1-1, and there was a 10-minute stretch within the second half between like the 65 or the 65th minute after a couple substitutions, and then like the 75th minute where Canada just scored 3 times. I mean, there was a bit of quality and pace and rapidness from Alphonso Davies to keep a ball in, test a player, and just blow by everybody and then beat the keeper with a left-footed strike. And then you saw a Tejan Buchanan header later on, and then Jonathan David kind of got a lucky finish, I'll be honest, but he did end up scoring. But look at the timestamps on that: 66, 77. I believe that's a 78 or 79. I mean, it was a very, very close stretch that where they just said, nope, Panama, this is it. Our quality, our class is going to show, and it absolutely did. Now Canada, which personally I didn't really think of as a solidified qualifier, are looking like they're going to be one. And with a couple more wins, it looks like Mexico, US, and Canada are going to be the 3 teams that get out of here. But you never know what's going to happen in CONCACAF. You never really know. And the next couple of games will be coming in November, like every other nation. So enough about the CONCACAF in North America. Let's get into one of the most important, one of the most intense, one of the most passionate qualifiers across the world, and that's South America. I mean, 10 teams, always in it. There's no other qualifying that has to happen. It's just here you are. You're going to play a round of, I believe, like 18 games. Just go. That's what it is in South America, and that's what makes it so special. And I know Manny's over here on the other side, always scratching his head and getting frustrated about Peru, but I do the same with Ecuador. I have that heritage in me, and I'm always tuning into this because it is a phenomenal time. If you're a neutral, it's a phenomenal time. But when you're invested, I can't imagine what it does to you. Man, it's tough. But there are a couple of really good matchups tonight. A couple of matchups that I think are going to prove to be most important in terms of the rest of these games for these countries. And I'll start off with one: Brazil and Uruguay. Uruguay right now has had to climb up the ladder to get into the 4th place spot. They're tied on points with Ecuador, but if you look at that goal differential, you can see the difference in the 2 teams. Ecuador have actually scored 7 more goals than Uruguay, and that's not something that I would have imagined. And they've only conceded the same amount. They're on the same level. Actually, let's talk about rate your. That's a really good question. I would say it's like an 8 or a 9, maybe a 9 or a 10. I think that they're going to do it. I don't think that there's much question that they're going to make it. It's just a matter of how they make it and if Berhalter is the right man for the job going into Qatar. That's what I'm worried about. I'm looking at these qualifiers for the United States and I'm saying, is Berhalter the guy that's going to bring the right 23 people to the World Cup? Who is he testing out? Who is he giving experience to? But I think overall quality is going to outshine anything else. And no matter what, you're always going to have some sort of quality on the United States right now. They have the most talented team they have ever had. Ever. And I genuinely mean that. I think the United States are more talented than they've ever been. And I think that that's going to outshine, even if they lose this upcoming game to Mexico. Great. I think they'll still finish in a 2nd or 3rd spot. So getting back here, Ecuador and Uruguay, I mean, they have been on the same track. They've gotten the same amount of points. Ecuador have had a bad loss 3 or 4 games ago. I don't remember when it was. But you're looking at this and you're saying which teams from the 2018 World Cup are not necessarily going to make it. And you're looking at the Colombias and the Perus and the Chiles who have now fallen off. Their golden generation is gone. Can Ecuador actually stun anybody? Can they? It all comes down to tonight, and I believe it says the same for Uruguay too. It's not necessarily Uruguay stunning anybody. It's the opposite. Is can they prove people right? Are they the big country that they have been in recent times? They're one of the very few countries that have actually won the World Cup. But I say it all comes down to tonight because there are two, maybe really three key matchups tonight for a couple of teams, and Uruguay is one of them. They're taking on Brazil, and that's a matchup that Uruguay need to at least get a point out of. It's going to be tough. It is absolutely going to be tough, and a lot of these players too have not only their national team on their minds, but they're getting ready. I believe I saw something with a couple of countries in England, or a couple of clubs in England, getting ready to charter flights back for them so they can be ready for the weekend. But really, all eyes are on these matchups. All their heads are going to be in these matchups, and this Brazil Uruguay game at 8:30 is going to be a special one. And I'm going to say the same for Colombia Ecuador. For me, for Ecuador, a win tonight proves that they are contenders. A win tonight against Colombia proves that they are contenders to actually qualify for the World Cup after missing out in 2018. And if they're able to do so, if they can beat Colombia, they'll go on 19 points. Colombia will still be that fifth place team for the most part, but they will be 6 points removed, right? Or even actually more than that. And this is a game for Ecuador that's going to prove to be really vital. It'll prove to me if they're pretenders or contenders, and they have to get the job done. They absolutely have to get the job done. And actually, the same goes for my producer's country in Peru. They've fallen down the table a little bit, have not had a hot start, but they have to beat Argentina tonight. Maybe not beat, because this is always going to be one of the toughest games. A point, exactly. A point would be huge for Peru going into this. They've had like I said, they've had a rocky start, and they've had I think they're coming off a really bad loss to Bolivia 1-0, who's at like the bottom of the table. But it's a country that has talent. Maybe some of it's aging. Are they going to get enough out of Korea, or anything out of Korea if he comes back to the national team? We'll see. But there are a couple of players there that are still learning. There are a couple of players there that are somewhat veterans. One that I can speak highly of, actually, and I don't like to, but it's Pedro Gaese, the goalkeeper. I mean, he's always been really solid for them. But tonight against Argentina is going to prove to be really vital for Peru. Can they get at least a point against Argentina and start to build a little bit of, confidence going into these last stretch of games in the next couple of windows? Because I'm looking at their schedule now. After they play Argentina, it's another match against Bolivia and then Venezuela, who are two of the bottom teams in qualifying. Then you have Colombia, Ecuador, Uruguay, and Paraguay. If Peru want to get there, you need 6 points against Bolivia and Venezuela. And then when it comes to the rest, you figure it out when you get there. But this November window for Peru and this game against Argentina are not necessarily make or break, but they're kind of make or break. So I will be making sure that Manny has somebody to talk to while this goes on, because it's going to be really, it's going to be really, really something. The intensity levels are going to be really high, but I'm very excited for these couple of games tonight. I believe another one that I didn't mention, Bolivia is taking on Paraguay. Paraguay, who play a great 5-4-1 formation, really buckle down, but have a couple of quality attackers. So they're able to get the job done at some points. You also have Chile and Venezuela. Yes.
Let's not also forget that Venezuela, listen, they are last, man, but they've actually shown in the last 3 games that they have form. They have attacking presence. And I think that's one of the things that if you're a Chilean fan tonight, don't underestimate them. No. I know Ecuador did. I know Peru did. We were lucky enough to escape with a 1-0 lead in Lima. But to me, man, Venezuela has all of a sudden been that team that if they would have started like this in the beginning, they probably wouldn't be in 10th. But yeah, man.
And I think they've brought in a couple of different players since that first window.
They brought in youngsters, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's the most difficult thing for most teams in South America to try to conceive. Like you look at Uruguay, Suarez is getting older, Cavani's getting older. And then you look at their midfield with Valverde and Betancourt, and you're asking yourself, why isn't this team actually performing to its level? And I don't want to say it, man, but those guys up front can't perform 90 minutes again, game in and game out. And then you look at my rival, La Roja. They had seven, win. No, I'm sorry, 7 games without a win. They finally get one, but they've been calling Robbie Robinson, and they called this other guy who has a mother from Chile who actually scored a goal for them, which is great. But
Ben Barrington, that
yeah,
guy,
Ben Barrington from whatever. But you can kind of see it. Those international teams that were once for us when we were a little bit, 5-10 years ago, the guys are getting older, man. It's time to start rotating. I think that's my frustrations when it comes to Ricardo Gareca in Peru. I love Farfan. I love Paolo Guerrero. Thank you for giving us those great memories, man. But you got to start. Listen, I understand you want to go in with the same group of players per se that have the same experience, man. But it's quite clear you got to get youngsters starting to get in here. You have to start playing the youngsters. We're not Brazil. We're not Argentina, right? Those two countries, unfortunately, they breed players every single day, right?
Yeah.
For us, it's like we have to go out there, we have to search for them. But listen, my thing with Peru and Gareca is he's going out there and getting a Cuevas and a Carrillo who's hurt, but just players that are playing with other teams around the world that really have no damn competition, man. Instead of going to your own league in Peru and looking at the guys that are actually busting their asses off to actually win at least a game, those are the type of players that I think, when it comes to, Uruguay and Chile and a little bit of Peru, maybe a little bit of Ecuador, but you guys to me have a solid youth foundation. The only issue is you guys got to have a better coach with better direction.
Yes.
That's my thing.
Yes.
But
it's too inconsistent with the Ecuadorian manager.
Yeah, and Ethan, Spain winning the World Cup, maybe, but they need a little bit more firepower up front before I can say anything.
Agreed.
And let's hope that Busquets can actually make it because he's not young either. So.
Well, yeah, and another point of you making that with managers and bringing in like old talent, you saw it with Costa Rica last night against the United States. I learned a lot about the Costa Rican national team, and I learned that this coach is basically fully stubborn about bringing up young guys, and he wants to stay with the Brian Ruizes and those kind of players that have been around for like 20 years, and it's just not working for them. So they might not even qualify, which would be a surprise. So let's wrap up here. Let's say one more thank you to Dangerous Minds Brewing Company for sponsoring the show. It'll come to you live every single Thursday at 10 a.m. Make sure you go check out Dangerous Minds for some beer, for some pizza. They also have some great appetizers. I like to get one of them called Just the Crust. It's basically just like garlic bread with a really good marinara sauce. And if you want a little snack while you're watching Premier League or La Liga or Serie A or anything like that, maybe even Bundesliga, go on and stop by, get yourself a beer that you may like, go and try some beers that you may thought you'd never like. Dangerous Minds does it all there. So thank you so much for them to sponsoring us and letting the 30-minute pitch happen here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Like I said, this is going to come to you live every single Thursday, 10 a.m. We're talking about every single major topic in the world when it comes to football, and even we're going to talk about Inter Miami, which I didn't do today, surprisingly, but it's not important right now. And then we're also going to talk U.S. men's national team as we did today, the local teams, and also all the big stories here on the 30-minute pitch. 5 Reasons Sports Network. I'm Austin Robillard. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and check us out. There's a bunch of content always. Check out Donald Daly. You have the starting 9 with Ethan and every other thing that you can imagine when it comes to the Heat, Marlins, Dolphins, Canes, and even Inter Miami. So make sure you check everything out. We will see you here again with the 30-minute pitch on Thursday at 10 a.m. Can't wait for it. See you next week.